Sylvanas' arc through Shadowlands, just because I was asked this. And I'm going to tell you the story as I have experienced it. And this isn't me speculating. I'm going to tell you the story as I have consumed it. And this isn't me telling you this is how you should have done it. This isn't me telling you you're stupid if you didn't get this stuff from the story or if you got different things from the story. I was asked like what I consider Sylvanas' arc to be, so I'm going to tell you. So we go into Shadowlands with all the shit from BFA having happened, and the main question for most of us throughout BFA was, why is Sylvanas doing what she is doing? Because she seems to be overstepping the line in terms of like what the war is really about and what is acceptable in war, and she's clearly got something else going on. She's clearly got this power from somewhere. She's much stronger than she should be. That has been established in the storytelling, and by the time she eats off at the end of BFA, it's clear that she's working for someone. So you're like, okay, well, who's she working for? Going into Shadowlands, we know it's the jailer. So the next thing we know, she goes to Icecrown and she fights Bolvar, and she takes the Helm of Domination and she destroys it, opening up a portal, or the sky above Icecrown, which we assume is where all the Moorsworn and stuff come from, who then go and capture the Planeteers. It might even be her way into the Shadowlands as well. Kind of what we assume, right? Because we use the Helm of Domination to then get into the Shadowlands from Icecrown as well. So we know that whatever she's doing, she is enabling this force in the Shadowlands to make their move and capture the Planeteers. Why didn't Arthas just do that? Arthas was considered a failure by Zovaal. This is the thing. Everyone talks about how Arthas was fucking mind controlled by Zovaal when all the evidence points to the contrary. I've always felt like the sense was that he just didn't want to. He had his own thing. Arthas' humanity resisted both Ner'zhul and the jailer. Yeah, totally. He did his own thing. Anyway. So at this stage, we've got a reason to go into the Shadowlands, to rescue the Planeteers. And that's why we go into the Shadowlands, we go instantly to the Moor, we find the Planeteers in the Moor. Turns out they've been there, like, it feels like ages, and they've been tortured by the jailer. And our first time we see Sylvanas in the Moor is where she makes it very clear that she is siding with the jailer, and we are to imply that everything she's done in BFA was somehow in service to that. She makes that very clear in a speech she has to Anduin. In the opening Moor section. We rescue the Planeteers, we interrogate like a big spirit. You can tell I've done this intro a lot of times, with pieces of the Helm of Domination, and we work out that there might be a way to get out of the Moor. So that's what we do. We are the only ones that can actually escape from the Moor. The Planeteers are stuck there, while Anduin holds off the jailer. We're able to use the Old One kind of stone to escape to Oribos, while the jailer recaptures the Planeteers. And in doing so, seeing Anduin use the light to hold off his power, he recognizes something that will help him in his plan. That's the moment when he identifies Anduin as being the thing that he was looking for when he kidnapped the Planeteers in the first place. Something that's really interesting to think about, I think, is that we are to assume that it was Sylvanas who gave him the candidates. We now know that his plan was to find a soul who was dedicated to duty and honor, who would gain access to specifically Bastion, who he could use as an avatar to then steal Archon's sigil. That's what he was testing them for. And when he said that to Sylvanas, he was like, okay, this is what I need. I need someone who can get into Bastion and who will be allowed access to Bastion as a living mortal, who then I will use to get into Bastion, right? And she was like, okay, well, what do we need? And he was like, well, we need someone who is dedicated to service and honor and sacrifice. And she was like, I've got some fucking names for you. And it's really interesting, the choices that she makes. She recommends Anduin, she recommends Jaina, she recommends Thrall, she recommends Bane, and Tyrande. Every single one of those are people that she would consider an enemy. Every single one of them. But she gave their names knowing that they had the characteristics of sacrifice, honor, like the good characteristics. Tyrande jumped on her own. No, she was one of the names. They tried to kidnap Tyrande as well, but they couldn't. She kicked their ass. But then she went and she did go in on her own, but she was one of the names on the list. They did try and kidnap her. Sylvanas gave her name as one of the people that the jailer should check out who has those qualities. And that's really interesting. The jailer said, I need someone who's really good and really righteous. And the Sylvanas went, oh, all my enemies are that. All the people I fucking hate and who hate me are those good things that you've described. But it's really interesting because what it implies is that if we think about it a little bit more deeply, which why not? I like doing that. It implies that Sylvanas knows that what she's doing is, in the short term, bad. She is against the good guys, and she knows that, but she's doing it for the greater good. And in the cutscenes that we see with her and Anduin, we establish, in my mind, very clearly, that, yeah, she's doing what she's doing for the greater good, and she believes that the cycle of life and death is unfair, and she wants to destroy it. And the jailer's told her that's what he's going to do. So that's what she's going to do. That's why she's teaming up with the jailer. Doesn't mean she thinks he's a great guy. It means her interests and his interests align. She is kind of like traumatized by the things that the cycle of life and death has done to her. She's seen the Shadowlands. She's seen our reality. She just doesn't think it's fair, and she wants to break it down. She thinks, like, the way she describes it to Anduin is quite explicit. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter what you do in life, because there's always going to be the Shadowlands, and that it's just this incredible unfairness and cruelty that she believes this cycle is. The idea that when you go to the Shadowlands, the first thing that happens to you is that you get judged by the Arbiter. I've got a feeling Sylvanas doesn't like the idea of being judged by anyone. That includes the Arbiter, right? She believes that reality would benefit greatly from destroying or, you know, remaking the cycle of life and death, which she considers to be very unfair. So that is her motivation. That is her reason for aligning with the jailer, because she considers their objectives to align. She genuinely believes in this cause, and I think those cinematics make that very clear in the way that she tries to convince Anduin to join them. Why not just dominate her if you're the jailer? Why? She was on his side anyway. Most of the people that follow the jailer aren't dominated by him. And there's very strong evidence that Arthas wasn't dominated by him for that exact reason. He was a failure and he just didn't do what he was supposed to. Helya, again, someone who's got very strong reasons for wanting to destroy the framework of life and death, is on the jailer's side without any need for domination. Muatzala, again, someone who has strong feelings about who should be in charge when it comes to life and death, is on his side without any need for domination. Sylvanas, like, the thing is that these are people who have joined him who believe in his stated aims and objectives. The fact that Sylvanas clearly, genuinely believes in this cause is shown not just because she explicitly says so, but because she tries to convince Anduin to join them. And she thinks he will. This is someone who we know she considers to be honourable and good, because when the jailer asked her for someone who was honourable and good, she gave him Anduin's name. So she thinks that someone who is honourable and good can be persuaded to join them. That's how much she genuinely believes in the cause. It's as simple as that. We know that she considers Anduin to be good and noble and pure and honourable and full of sacrifice. And she genuinely thinks she can persuade Anduin to join them. She thinks her cause is just, and she thinks Anduin will see that too. There's also obviously the added thing that she knows that the jailer will dominate him if he doesn't. And she's really against that because, you know, it's something that is very close personally to her heart. But she tries everything to make Anduin join willingly so that she doesn't have to be privy to someone being dominated. Because, yeah, that's obviously something that she is disgusted by and doesn't want any part of. There's the chance that that is going to be the step too far. But, you know, she's in this deep. She's sunk this much cost into it. That goes all the way through into helping the jailer get to Korthia and recover what he needs to from the City of Secrets to get in, you know, to get to Oribos and get the sigils and what have you and all that MacGuffin shit. And she's protecting the jailer all the way through that last fight. We fight Sylvanas in that fight, but we're trying to get to the jailer and she is standing in our way and she's trying to, like, stop us getting to the jailer. That's what's happening in that fight. That's the story of that fight. It's at the end of that fight where they've won. The jailer is going to Zereth Mortis to do his plan. This is fantastic. And he turns around and he dominates the Planeteers and he puts them in chains and he makes them kneel. And that's the moment where Sylvanas goes, he wants more from this than he has said. She's kind of dumb, if you say so. And the reason she turns is because she finds out something that she didn't know before. The jailer has said, we're going to destroy the cycle of life and death. We're going to combine everything into one cosmos. Not separated, none of this life and death shit, none of this prison shit. It's all going to be one cosmos, as it should be. And Sylvanas is like, yeah, awesome. And it's not till they get to the end of Sepulchre that she realizes there's an extra part of that plan, which is, and also, I'm going to be in charge of it, and everyone's going to fucking serve me, including you. But what she didn't know is so obvious. If you say so, man. If you say so. For me, it makes sense logically as a motivation. She wants something so badly that she aligns with someone who she knows isn't good. Dear God, she knows this person isn't good. He gave Arthas his power, but she agrees with his objective. And she aligns herself against people who she considers good to achieve this objective. It's not like she suddenly decides she doesn't like the plan. She discovers something again about the plan that she didn't know before that she doesn't like. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is that they think she turns on the same information that she was okay with. And that's not what happens. That's not what the story tells us. The story tells us that she discovers something about the plan. When the jailer thinks he wins, his mask slips, even though he's putting a mask on, and he's like, haha, also, everyone's going to serve me. And she's like, oh no. And you know what? If Helya had been there, she would have done the same thing. If Muatzala had been there, he would have done the same thing. If it had been Helya in that scene with the jailer, and the jailer had been like, and also, I'm going to rule everyone, haha, then Helya would have been like, no. If Muatzala had been there, Muatzala would have been like, no. Maybe if Denathrius had been there, Denathrius would have been like, no, dude, we're doing this together, remember? He literally was keeping something from these people, and then revealed what that thing was, and that's why she turns, right? She doesn't change her mind, she discovers something new. It's like, you might think Woody Allen movies are really, really good, and then one day you discover who Woody Allen actually is, and you're like, oh, you weren't dumb to like Woody Allen movies, they're good. Some of them. You found out new information that made you change your mind, and you decided to quietly put that Woody Allen t-shirt in the bin. Or Kevin Spacey, yeah, exactly. Didn't Kevin Spacey get cleared? I don't give a shit if Kevin Spacey got cleared. I work in theatre in the UK, specifically in South London, where the old Vic is, and I can tell you, Kevin Spacey is not a good person. Take it from someone who is literally an actor in the South London acting scene, right? And who knows many other people who are. When Sylvanas realizes the true extent of the jailer's ambitions, she is like, shit. And the thing is, right, another fun thing that the cinematic makes abundantly clear is that when she fires an arrow at the jailer, she's not trying to kill him. It's a suicide thing. Yeah, if the arrow gets through and kills him, fine. But she can't genuinely think that firing that arrow at him is going to kill him. That is a, fuck, I was wrong, I give up. Like, she doesn't try and put things right, because if she wanted to do that, she would try and help the Planeteers, right? It's just an act of nihilistic, like, I can't believe I was wrong about this. I've got literally nothing to live for. And it's not the first time Sylvanas has been in this situation where she's like, I've got nothing else to carry on for. Like, she's literally committed suicide before. Yeah, it was a fuck you arrow. It wasn't an arrow that was trying to put anything right. It was an arrow that was like, oh, fuck. So the idea that she was trying to kill the jailer or put things right with that arrow or find redemption with that arrow or what have you is misunderstanding the story, in my opinion. Like this is, I'm telling you, I'm telling you how I see her arc and like how I read it and how I've experienced it. So then she is obviously in our custody. Oh, the jailer turns around and, because he's a terrible baddie, gives her part of missing soul back, which we've already had established as a thing with Frostmourne, with Uther's storyline in 9.1, and Uther having a missing part of his soul. You would have experienced that in the Kyrian Covenant campaign, but the really important bits of it, you'd have experienced in the 9.1 campaign, no matter what covenant you were. And so this has been established as a thing that happens to you when you're killed by Frostmourne. Like, you're missing a part of your soul. It's been like explored in depth, and he reveals that, he's got a bit of Sylvanas' soul. You would have known this as well if you read the Folk and Fairy Tale book, but you don't need to have read it. It's explained like very adequately, like better in game. He takes it, and in what we assume is like an act of cruelty, he gives her part of soul back. I don't think it comes across very well, and I think it's a stupid thing to do, but I think the jailer is quite stupid, really. to be perfectly honest with you. Certainly short-sighted. In the same way you could say that Emmett Selk bringing Y'shtola back to life was probably short-sighted. She plays quite an important role in stopping his plans in Shadowbringers, right? So him helping us get her back was probably short-sighted. It achieved a short-term aim, but it really fucked him up in the long term. And you could argue that the same thing with the jailer, right? He wanted to just be spiteful and cause her pain and suffering because he thought that the Planeteers would enact that on her. Probably quite feasibly. If Uther hadn't been part of the Planeteers at that point, they probably would have done to her what the jailer thought they would have done to her. But Uther had been on a journey which put him in a position to treat her differently. Jaina and Bane and Thrall had not been on that journey, and we see in the cinematic at the beginning of 9.2 that they would happily just throw her in jail or execute her or anything you like. As the jailer thought that they would, it's Uther being there that spoils that plan. On the face of it, quite a good story beat, I think, but I don't think they do it well enough. But that's the story beat, right? And yeah, there's also a chance that she would never even wake up. Again, it was Uther that kind of, having been through that process, you're quite right, Ibrahim, it was Uther having been through that process that allowed her to come through the other side of it. Yeah, absolutely. So the Planeteers would have actually done what the jailer thought they would have done. It was Uther being there that spoiled it, which is interesting. So in this situation, Sylvanas has had a part of her soul returned to her. We see Uther helping her through the process of explicitly accepting responsibility for the things that she has done. Banshee Sylvanas justifies the things that she's done as being for what she believed was the greater good. Ranger General Sylvanas, which was the missing part of her soul, which wasn't like a hole in her soul that got filled up. It wasn't like a personality that she was missing. It's like a photograph of a snapshot in time. It's like if my 21-year-old self suddenly turned up and I had to explain all the things I'd done since I was 21 to my 21-year-old self, and my 21-year-old self might well turn around and go, there's no fucking way I would do that. This is not me. And I have to be like, well, I'm sorry, bitch, but it is. You are me and I am you, and you do this stuff. And you've done this stuff. I'm really sorry. But it is what it is, big nose, live with it. And that's what we are told explicitly in those exact words, what the missing soul thing is. So Uther helps Sylvanas come to terms with who she is and what she's done, and like the reintegration of the missing part of the soul back into herself and being. And she wakes up. Let's remember that at the moment in the story, Sylvanas hasn't done anything objectively good. Like, you can talk about redemption as much as you like, but you could read everything that she's done since then, which is help us get the jailer. You could see that as A, self-preservation, because if he remakes reality, that means, where she lives as well. She won't fucking survive the remaking of reality. You could also see it as just a pure act of revenge because he kicked her fucking ass. She hasn't done anything that isn't self-serving since she woken up. She hasn't done anything selfless since she's woken up. She does, as we're going to see, help Anduin come to terms with what's happened to him, being under the jailer's domination. But again, this is all in service of getting the guy that wronged her. You're right, genocide doesn't deserve redemption, and I agree with you. I'd agree with you on that. And I think the story has shown us twice now, Riku, that Sylvanas agrees with that as well. That's how I have taken what those cinematics has shown us. I agree with you. Like, you can't redeem genocide, right? I absolutely agree with you. But I think Sylvanas agrees with you as well. And I think that's quite important. I'm just describing the story as it's been told. So, like, you might justifiably say you don't trust them to see this through, and I actually don't disagree with you. I'm just telling you the story as it's been told, and as I have consumed it, right? Honestly, if they manage to do it the right way, I'm not mad if she comes back with us and stays part of the future of WoW. I do love me some Sylvanas, and she now being Ranger General could lead to some cool atonement storylines in the future. Also, hi, first time chatting. I see, Fistad. Yeah, it's a good point as well. I'm down with that, but I can also see how people wouldn't want her involved in the story going forward, like, at all. I can see both sides of it. I don't think anyone is wrong. I do agree with the fact that you can't atone for genocide. However, human history teaches me that people can be fine with people who have committed genocide if their interests align. The fact that if I bring up the atomic bombs being dropped in Japan, I can guarantee you that people in this chat will defend the atomic bombs being dropped in Japan. And the people that will defend those bombs being dropped in Japan will be good people, who are not bad people, and who have good politics, and who are kind people, who would never forgive genocide, but they can find it to defend those bombs because they're on the same side as the person that dropped them. Now, I disagree with them strongly, but that's only one example, you know? You can find this kind of stuff all over the place, right? You can find people defending all kinds of heinous shit, or if not defending it, being okay with it. I know people that marched against the war in Iraq who would vote for Tony Blair right now if he was running. It's amazing people's capacity to forgive unforgivable things, or at least forget about unforgivable things. We see that in human history all of the time. So, whereas I don't think that necessarily makes for good storytelling in a fantasy thing, it is undeniably something that happens in real life. I'm not defending it as a story beat or a character motivation in a fantasy thing. What I'm saying is it's not really an unbelievable thing. Yeah, we're talking about Hiroshima again, sorry. But it's true, though. It's true. Like the fact that people can be okay with Winston Churchill, who objectively committed genocide in India, right? He's seen as one of the greatest Britons. I agree with you wholeheartedly that genocide isn't, like, you can't be redeemed from genocide, but what I see every day of my life is people being okay with people that commit genocide because they have other reasons to be okay with it. The hack job that is real life with all these unbelievable characters and motivations, fucking hell, man. I cannot understand the retconning of fucking Winston Churchill, man. So unbelievable to me. Winston Churchill is bad writing. Very bad writing. People's okayness with Winston Churchill, terrible fucking writing, and I blame Danusa. Importantly, in terms of Sylvanas' arc, I agree with you that genocide cannot be redeemed or forgiven, but I think the story so far has shown us that Sylvanas agrees with that sentiment. And that's Sylvanas' arc through the expansion, as I saw it and as I read it. And there's nothing speculative about that. There's nothing looking back on it in hindsight. Like, I've described the story as I took it as it came, right? As I consumed it. You're allowed a different take on this. I don't mind, honestly. But, like, is there anyone who disagrees with any of my reading of that? Because that's what I believe the story is as was told. And I don't mind it, honestly. The stuff I fucking hate about WoW's Shadowlands story is the jailer, and it's pretty much confined to the jailer, if I'm completely honest. I don't mind what's happened with Sylvanas at all. The last few I feel like Sylvanas has been very well served with cinematics in this expansion, if not with questing and story. But with cinematics, I think they've done a great job of explaining her motivation, explaining what's driving her, showing her journey through that. I could follow the Sylvanas story pretty easily, and I liked a lot of the beats in the Sylvanas story. My problem with Shadowlands' story, and I would describe myself as someone who does have a problem with Shadowlands' story, but my problem with Shadowlands' story is not Sylvanas and is not Anduin. It's almost entirely the jailer and the waste of time that the jailer was.